here we are. And we'd just like to welcome everyone to the South Orange County Gem and Mineral Society, our monthly general meeting. Our president, Gary Martin, will be on anytime now, I'm sure of it. And here's just some quick housekeeping. During the presentation, I'm going to mute everybody. So, you know, there's so much more ambient noise than you would have even known. So if you would like to participate you know, and you have questions on the presentation, you see this big red arrow here. It shows you can go ahead and type into chat, and you know, as available, I'll be able to posit those questions to Walt. Okay. And this evening's presentation is Rare and Unusual Gemstones of California with Walt Lombardo. And there he is. He's on your screen too, but there he is. He's a geologist with more than 35 years of experience in mineralogy, mining, and mineral exploration. He has worked so many impressive places, large and small, and managed the South Nevada office of Nevada Division of Minerals for 16 years. He currently owns the Nevada Mineral and Book Company, and they are just wonderfully busy because everyone is so excited to be out and learning again and shopping and moving around. And if you have a chance to go by, they're located in Orange, California, beautiful little historic town here in Orange County, California. And yeah, he's, again, it's the Nevada Mining and Book Company, and they're linked on our Facebook page, and do consider going by to visit. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and allow Walt to share his, and we'll get into the presentation.
Okay, let's see here. Let me see what's going on here. Let's see. Get out of that. I'm trying to, cancel. Let's see here. Something went wrong? Am I here?
Well, you're here, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm trying. I've got one of these weird things came up here. Let me try to eliminate some of this other stuff. Okay, I think we're here. Let me see if I can. Okay, here we go. Let's see if I can get it to share.
There it is.
Okay, we'll get it going. Okay, let me just go back a little bit. Okay, well, thank you very much. I say this is my first Zoom presentation. Actually, okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can everyone hear me? Just make sure. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. I've done a series of talks on gem localities in North America. So some of the topics in California gems, I've covered other talks like diamonds in North America, rubies and sapphires in North America, pegmatites in Southern California. But there's a lot of really cool gemstones that even people in California don't know about. And that includes Benitoite and Vesuvianite and Lapis Lazuli, which will be the ones I'm talking about today. I happen to love Benitoites. It's our state gemstone. In fact, I just sold a beautiful 1.04 carat flawless Benitoite just a little while ago this afternoon to one of my clients. So we do deal in a lot of gems, mostly from custom cutters. But so I've been interested in gemstones since I was about 8 years old. I started collecting in some of the California pegmatites as a kid. When I got my driver's license, the whole reason was to go to old mines to collect minerals. Got a degree in geology, worked in the mining industry, both as an exploration geologist and a mine geologist. Also worked for the University of Nevada for a while, the state of Nevada, and retired. My last job was a project manager for a company that did uranium, gallium, and germanium exploration. And when I retired, I opened a full-time gem mineral business. So anyway, but been in California for 11 years now this time around, and have had a lot of opportunities to go and search for gems. And California is such a fabulous state for gemstones. You know, from the pegmatites in the south to jade and benitoite in the north. California is really one of the richest states in the US and probably one of the finest gem localities on the planet. So I say we'll talk about benitoite first, and then we'll go on to the others. And let's see, hopefully, let's see here. I'm gonna have to see how we do this here next. Okay, I think I've got to do something here. Okay, so here's just a list of some of the things that are found in the state of California. Many of you might be aware of this. The three highlighted in red on the left side of the screen are the ones we'll be talking about today, but there's a lot of things, and you can go just about any county in the state of California and find some neat gem materials. And hopefully some of you had a chance to do that. And even diamonds, for those who aren't aware of that. So let's see here. We're going to go next. I'm trying to, okay, here we go. All right. One of the reasons that California is such a wonderful state for gemstones is the fact such a diverse geology. If you look at the state map here, and the different colors represent different types of rocks of all different ages. California is right on the junction of the North American plate and the Pacific Ocean plate. So this is where an awful lot of compression, compaction, subduction, all kinds of things have taken place over, you know, several billions of years. And that has just created the ideal environment to find all these really cool minerals because we have so many different geologic environments. And like I say, the stuff we're going to talk about tonight is actually found in metamorphic environments. The talk I do on like pegmatites in Southern California, those are all igneous rocks that they're found in. Tonight's talk is going to be on some of the gems found in metamorphic rocks. And the metamorphic rocks are the ones that pretty much run along the coast. If you look at the rocks that are in green and gray along the right side of the screen, most of those are the metamorphics. The reds and the, you know, that run through the center of the state, those are the granites, and include where a lot of the pegmatite gems and things like that are found. But so we're going to focus on metamorphics tonight, which is a little bit different. Okay, so let's start with probably the queen of all the California stones, and that is the mineral benitoite. Benitoite has a really fascinating history. It's a unique gemstone. The only location on the planet where gem quality benitoite is found is right here in California. It has a unique crystal habit. It's the only mineral that forms in this particular type of crystal formation, and has a very unique chemistry as well. So it's a really cool gem, and unfortunately, the mine is played out. So really, there's no new material that will come from the ground in the foreseeable future. Okay, just to give you an idea of where benitoite's found, it's named after San Benito County, and it's sandwiched in the very southernmost part of San Benito County, in between Fresno and Monterey County. So it's you know, just a little bit west of Monterey and north of San Luis Obispo and the towns in San Luis County. Okay, a little bit of history. Benitoite is a very recently discovered mineral. It was discovered in 1907 by a man named James Crouch. He was a prospector, and he got financial support by a gentleman's last name was Dallas. And this mineral was found in the field, and it was taken to a professor at UC Berkeley by the name of George Lauterbach, and he identified it as a brand new mineral to science. It has a really interesting history. It was recognized very quickly to be a really cool gem material, and although some contrary to popular belief, it wasn't the Tiffany & Company that marketed, but a company out of San Francisco. Gentleman named Ikrit of Srivan Company of San Francisco had the original rights. And mining commenced at the site between about 1907 and 1912. And because the mine was financed by Mr. Dallas. It was actually called the Dallas Gem Mine, and that mine can still be used to this day for a lot of the specimens that you'll see come out of there. So during most of its history, it was called the Dallas Gem Mine. Poor Mr. Crouch didn't get as much recognition as he probably deserved. But when you have the money, I guess you call the rules, call the shots. Anyway, here's an early picture of the mine. Initially, it was an underground mine. There were some outcrops that were found, but pretty quickly it's in veins, so they had to go underground. And this is a really cool picture. And if you can see on your screen, the rocks that are exposed where it's been cut are a little bit wavy. Again, these are all altered, metamorphic rocks. They're banded, they're kind of a little bit stretched and buckled. And this is the material, because it was fractured, it allowed mineral fluids to come in through the fractures, and that's where the benitoite and the other minerals formed. And say benitoite's not the only mineral that's found here. There are some other very unusual and some unique minerals that are found in the same location. Okay, benitoite, because it's rare, there was never a lot of it that was found. And so mining was in fits and starts. They mined around, after the initial mine closed around 1912, it was mined in the early 20s, in the mid 30s, again, the 1940s and 50s, but with very little production. Most of it was very small drill and blast or hand operations, and they never did find a lot. And because it was so rare and was an unknown mineral for the most part, it never had much of a following as far as a gem material. There was never a big demand, so there was never a lot of reason to go after it. So I did some calculations. There are a number of sources on material, but from what I can tell, between 1907 and 1967, only about 2,500 carats of faceted benitoite were produced, which is very little. I mean, I've seen faceted quartz crystals, that a single stone could be more than 2,500 carats. It's about the size of maybe an ostrich egg or something like that in size. So not a lot of material was produced. In the late 1960s, two gentlemen, Buzz Gray and Bill Forrest, went with the Dallas family, and they leased the mine and then purchased it. And they operated the mine through 1999. In that time, they used a little more advanced mining methods and were able to really ramp up production. Buzz Gray and his son Michael were very well-known faceters, and so a lot of the material that they mined, they cut themselves, as well as produce a lot of specimens. It was also during that time period that California was designated as the California State Gemstone. That was 1985. So that gave it a little bit of notoriety. But if you look at my notes here, that probably only about 2,000 carats of faceted benitoite was produced in that 22-year period. So still not a lot of material. Most of the stones were under a half a carat. A lot of stuff in the 5 point, 10 point, 25 point range. To this day, anything over a 1 carat gemstone is pretty large. There have been a few stones as large as 7, 9. I think the record is about 13 carats cut. One of the reasons that there's so little material that's cut is that the crystals are usually heavily included. There's a number of different minerals, including natrolite, which is the white mineral that it forms in. Also, there's a mineral called crossite, which is an asbestos-like mineral that can be included in these crystals. So in many cases, it's only the corners of the triangles of the crystals that are facetable. So generally, the stones are very small, and when people cut them, they cut to the shape of the stone, which makes for some very unusual shapes from time to time. Anyway, this is a little more recent picture of this area. It's a fairly mountainous area. There's just a couple of roads up through there. There's some wilderness areas nearby, so it's still pretty remote and pretty well undeveloped up in this area. So, but you can see, it was not a large mine, not a lot of production that came out of there for years. Okay, now in the 1980s, things started to change. Kennecott Corporation, which is a very large copper mining company that was based in Salt Lake City, they had a vice president who was very interested in gemstones. And he thought that Kennecott could corner the market on rare and unusual gemstones. So they made some deals with people that had unusual gem properties. They acquired a lease on the Benitoite mine. They also acquired leases on the Red Barrel mines in Utah and a few other places, and they were going to be like the Hunt brothers also in the 80s, and when they tried to corner the silver market. Well, unfortunately, they ran into the same problems the Hunt brothers did. It's very hard to control a market, even for something rare. They were also a very large company, and this was very small scale mining. So it did not work out well for them at all. They're looking at trucks that would carry 200, 300 tons, where, more likely a truck that carried a ton of material was more usable. So their commercial plans fizzled out and they lost a lot of money and got out of it. But it did pave the way for the purchase of the property from a company they call themselves Benitoite Mining. That was a subsidiary of a company out of Colorado that was known for mining the rhodochrosite specimens from the Sweet Home mine. This they commenced large scale for a small mine. They did blasting, they used heavy equipment, bulldozers, things like that, ripped up the ground and pretty much mined out the deposit. The Benitoite deposit occurs, the bottom of it is faulted. So basically you get to a certain level, you go through the faults and the ore deposit is gone. There's nothing left. So they literally mined it completely. So the mine is considered exhausted. There's always a slight possibility that somebody might find a little area that was faulted off to the side somewhere, but that's unlikely. So for all intents and purposes, in 2004, the mine was completely finished and probably would never produce any, material from, say, virgin ground. The property was purchased again, though. It was sold off by the company that had mined it. And today it's open and available as a feed dig. And basically you're going through the tailings, you're looking for rocks that might have slid down the hill, things like that. I guess they have nighttime digs where you go out with black lights. So it is still possible to find a benitoite on the property. A couple of years ago, I had a gentleman come into our store and he had a piece of benitoite that he'd found on one of his trips. I think it was around 2013, 2014. And we cut and set about a 1.07 carat benitoite for him. It was really quite a nice stone. So it is possible on occasion to still find something out there, even though the mine is essentially exhausted. Okay, this was at the mine in 2002, quite a big operation. They're using heavy equipment and they ripped up that place pretty good, put a lot of money into it, and did a really exceptional job of trying to get every last scrap of benitoite out of that mine. So I say chances of finding stuff today are pretty slim, although it's still possible. Okay, this is what you'll find today. They have it set up. If any of you have been to the Ocean View mine down in Pala, it's a very similar setup. You have a pile of material that you go through. You get a bucket, you take it to your screens and sieve it and wash it and hope you can find a little gemstone. And like I say, some people can and do occasionally find some nice little stones in there. Although most you'll find are crystals and a lot of included crystals, which are nice specimens, but not necessarily gem material. Anyway, but this is what everyone's looking for. Here's a couple of nice specimens. There's a really interesting crystal specimen on the left side of the screen. If you look in the corner, I don't know, can anyone see my arrow? This is one of the corners. You can see that material is fairly gemmy compared to the center of the crystal, which is white. That has a lot of inclusions in it. So the entire middle portion of most stones is not usable for gem material. You have to go to the edges, like here, like over here, like in here. And that's where they have to get the gem material, which is, the reason why the stones that are cut are generally so small.
Well, can you tell us how large that that stone is on the left-hand
This one
side,
right here?
the one on the matrix.
Okay, this one here is about 1.25 inches across. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't have a scale. And this piece here, this is one we cut. This is the 1.07 carat piece. And you see it's kind of a rounded triangular. A lot of stones are cut like this because they come from these corner areas where the section itself is more or less triangular. So that's why you'll see a lot of stones that are cut with these kind of odd shapes. Okay, now I'll talk a little bit about why this material is here. This is some metamorphic rocks that were basically caught in between the Pacific and the North American plates. This is material that has been impacted by, the coming together of the two continental and oceanic plates. This area has been subducted, so it's been dragged down, maybe 20, 30, 40 miles below the surface. This material was melted, it's been recrystallized and then brought back to the surface over time, and erosion has exposed these. The area in red, these are the primary areas where you've got potential to find the benitoite. And the benitoite mine itself is this little tiny red area right here on the screen, where there are some bigger areas that have possibility. There's some over here. There's a little bit on this side and a little bit over here. There are a few other locations near the gem mine that have produced some specimen benitoite, very small crystals, but none of them have produced any gem material. So I think there's 4 locations in this region that have produced specimens of benitoite, although very small, and none of it, again, gem. Okay, so basically the rock occurs as a serpentine with these, they call blue schists or glaucopane schist, which is really highly metamorphic altered basalt. And the basalts basically came from the oceanic crust. The benitoite occurs in the fracture fillings in this material with the white mineral natrolite, and then some rare minerals like neptunite, waukeanite, and fresnoite, and a few others. So there are really cool minerals for mineral collectors that are found there, although most of these are very small. Here's what the rock itself looks like. This is the altered basalts here, this kind of brownish material. You then had the benitoite form, which are these blue veins. This is actually a pretty rich area for benitoite, although most of this material is not gemmy at all. It's pretty massive. You can see it kind of interspersed here. And then the last thing to fill up the fractures was the natrolite, which is this white here. And to expose the benitoites, you have to dissolve the natrolite out of the rock and use a dilute hydrochloric acid. And it's kind of a tricky process to extract these things, because you want to leave some of the white matrix, the natrolite, on the specimen, because it makes for beautiful contrast. The blue on the dark sort of brownish to dark bluish green host rock doesn't look very attractive. So the best specimens have a little bit of the white with them. One nice thing about benitoite, it's a fluorescent mineral, and it glows bright blue under shortwave fluorescence. So a lot of people will go at nighttime and prospect for benitoite, after dark with a black light. And you can see it's pretty vivid. It's a lot like scheelite, and it's a very bright blue, and you can pick it up pretty quickly. And it's easy to distinguish between the yellow-orange scorpions that might be out there. So you hopefully know which is which. Okay. Here we go. There's a beautiful specimen here. This is a real specimen. This is not a created one. This is actually the way it was found and etched. You have these beautiful triangular benitoite specimens. And with that, you have some waukeanite and fresnoite, which are these orange to reddish minerals here. And you have these beautiful black crystals of neptunite, which in itself is a beautiful mineral. It's not a gem material, but it's actually a super dark red. It almost looks black, but they're quite spectacular. I mean, it looks like somebody created this piece, but it's actually a natural specimen. And on the right side, you see the fluorescence. Here's a rock. And, you know, both in, oops, sorry, let's go back. Okay, here you've got under, say, daylight or natural light, and then under fluorescence. So you can see it's pretty easy to pick out, you know, the benitoite from the host rock. So it's great for prospecting at night. Okay, here's a few of the other minerals that are found there. Joaquinite is very rare. It's named after San Joaquin Valley nearby. Then you have the jurolite, which is another rare mineral. It's this sort of black material here. You also have some neptunite with it, which is this shiny black crystals. And this is another rare, this is actually a copper mineral. It's pretty unusual. Jurolite is found, for example, in Butte, Montana, in some of the copper mines. So it's kind of unusual to find it at this mine here. And this is what everyone's looking for. This is a pretty spectacular benitoite. This one is about 1.5 carats. It's very well cut, and it really shows off the just intense, almost sapphire blue color that the best benitoite is known for. And it's quite a beautiful specimen. I will say, as far as the gem properties go, it has a great color. It has a high refractive index, so the stones are very lively, but it's a little on the soft side. It's a hardness of about 6 to 6.5, so it's not an ideal stone for rings. Probably better to use it as, you know, in jewelry, either in a pendant or earrings or something like that, where it doesn't, you know, get subject to a lot of abrasion. But the color rivals, you know, really nice sapphire. So color-wise, it's a pretty spectacular gemstone. And again, benitoite is considered one of the 10 rarest gemstones in the world. So we're really fortunate to have that here in California. Marjorie, can I open it up for a few questions? Because we're about to move on to the next one, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
If anyone has any questions, I'm going to go ahead. You just go ahead and ask to unmute, and I will, or you can put your question in the little chat window down below. Okay, hold on, Elaine. Let me go ahead and unmute you. Go ahead.
Well, just a thing. What is the thing about the orange benitoite? Is that stuff that's been treated?
You know, I don't think so. I think that the material that comes out of Japan, I think.
Okay.
I think it's another trace element which gives it the different color.
Yeah, not quite.
You know,
I saw it in, you know, Pete, is it Corey with Idco?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Pete.
Idaco, yeah, Idaco.
Idaco. And I said, is that benitoite? And I didn't really get a clear answer on it, so I was just kind of confused.
Yeah, there are some other places that produce benitoite specimens. Japan has a locale. There's even one in New Mexico. I think it's in the Zuni Mountains. Huh. So there are a few locations, but most of them are microminerals. You know, there are crystals that are a millimeter or so.
So tiny.
And nothing really gemmy. I've seen benitoite that's virtually clear, just colorless.
Wow.
So now this is a barium titanium silicate. So it does, you know, it's a pretty unique mineral. Like I said, it's the only one that's crystal class. The chemistry is pretty unique. So it's quite a neat mineral, actually.
Is it OTL? Is it the refractive index? Is it over the limit?
I don't think so. I think it's pretty close.
I can't remember.
I think it's pretty close.
Okay. And
So, but it is, yeah. Especially if you have a stone that's nearly colorless, you really see the refractive. I mean, they just sparkle. I've got a small stone. It's about 2/3 of a carat. That's almost colorless, and it's spectacular. Yeah.
Okay, and just, we have a question as well from Kali, who's because you had mentioned, I guess, that I did not know that it is one of the 10 most rare stones.
Yes.
And Kali wanted to know how much the last stone would be worth. I guess maybe on the previous slide is what.
Oh, okay. Let's go back here. This one here. Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, like diamonds, a lot of other gemstones, as the size goes up, the price goes up. You know, the things you look at are color. You look at the cut. I mean, just like the kind of the 4 C's, you know, the GIA pushes for diamonds, pretty well applies here, with the added one, the 5th C being color in this case. Stones above a carat are rare, And for every about half carat above that, the prices increased quite a bit. I think this one was about 1.5 carats. That stone could easily sell for 8 to 10,000 a carat retail, maybe even more, maybe as much as 12,000 a carat, because it's a pretty fine stone. So, you know, say it went for 10,000 a carat, that's a $15,000 stone. And it's not very big.
Question?
So,
Just one quick question. In the table of, you know, elements and stuff, wasn't that a missing link for a while?
I think it was, yeah, because I mean, it's an unusual combination. The barium titanium silicate was pretty unusual. And again, for the crystal structure is unique. There's a lot of things about benitoite that's very, very unusual.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions?
Thanks.
You bet. Okay, well, kind of, yeah, here's a couple other stones. Actually, here's a couple, actually, oh, I was thinking, okay, the stone on the left here, I made a mistake. The other one was a different stone. This is the one we actually cut for one of our customers. This is one, I think it was found, it was either 2013 or 2014 by one of my customers locally here. And it's a little over carat, 1.08 carat. So you can find stuff like this. Now he brought us a crystal fragment and we cut it, but it actually came out pretty good. It's a very nice stone. And this is another one that we just had that we made into a ring. This, you notice this is more typical. Usually the stones are fairly included. Again, this is a metamorphic rock. Tends to have a lot of crystals included in it, natrolite, the crossite, some other things. So it's not uncommon to see a lot of fractures and, you know, inclusions. So most of the material is not super high quality. You know, it's made up to some extent by the color and just the rarity. But again, if you look at the difference in clarity between the stone on the left, which is pretty clean, and the one on the right, you know, that's also a huge factor in pricing the stones. Obviously, you know, a stone like this on the left, it's a little bit under a carat, you know, maybe that's a $3,000, you know, a $4,000 retail price, where the one on the left here might be in the $5,000 a carat price range, retail. So just to give you an idea of the differentiation. And of course, you know, the larger it is, the size go up astronomical. In fact, I don't know if, like I say, I think the largest stone I think was about a 13 carat stone that's been cut for you know, I think that's about the record, which, you know, that easily would go for 10, 15,000 a carat, maybe 20,000 a carat if it was on the market. But it'd be a lot of money.
That was one lucky customer that found that at a feed dig, right?
Oh yeah, that's right. You know, I mean, I don't know what they charge, $100, $200, depending on what you do. That was a good day for him, because that was, you know, quite a stone after cut. Yeah, it's maybe worth, say, $4,000 or $5,000 easily. So every once in a while, people do get lucky. That's why we go up and do it, I guess. So, okay. Any other questions for benitoite? Okay. All right. Oh, one last thing. This is for those of you who have the Color Encyclopedia of Gemstones, which is a book by Joel Aram. Here's some really cool benitoites of different sizes. This was out of Joel Aram's personal collection. And I had the fortune to sell 3 of these stones. Actually, the one I have left is this one here, which is that little almost clear one. And when you see it in person, it is just a really lively stone. Because it's you know, very light colored. So yeah, there's a lot of neat historic stones. If you go to GIA in Carlsbad in their museum, they've got some wonderful examples that are periodically on display in the museum. Okay, next we're going to go to one of the more unusual gemstones from California. It's actually found in a number of places in the northern part of the state. It's well known as a gem material. It goes by several different names. The mineral name is Vesuvianite, actually named after Mount Vesuvius, where some crystals are found. But there's some other names. It's been known as Idocrase. It's an older name for the gemstone. Tiffany was marketing it in the early part of the 20th century, and they called it Californite. So it's a varietal name. and one of the localities, a place called Pulga, so it's also known as Pulga Jade, or sometimes they call it California Jade, because some of this material does look similar to jade in texture and color. On the right is just a big, massive boulder of kind of a bluish green Vesuvianite. Vesuvianite many times is from a bluish green to an olive green, sometimes even to an emerald green. This material on the right, obviously some tumbled material, is a little bit gemmier, but it's a really cool gemstone, another metamorphic rock. And so this one is found mostly in the northernmost counties of the state. Probably the best known area was the Happy Camp Vesuvianite, which is from Happy Camp up in the Siskiyou National Forest. I'm sorry, actually Klamath, above Siskiyou. And this is an area that was known for gold prospecting. A lot of gold up in this area, and probably in the 1850s, this Vesuvianite was discovered, and they thought it was jade. You can see we're real close to the Oregon border. Here's the Oregon border right here up at the Siskiyou Mountains. Let's see here, next. Okay, so anyway, it's got a very murky history. It's thought that a Chinese gold prospector found it, and his name was Wan Chan. He thought it looked like nephrite jade, which it looks very similar. There's another theory that it was found by a doctor named Dr. Hiwei on his land in the South Fork of the Indian Creek, which runs through Happy Camp in the early 1900s. In 1903, George Kuhns, who was the gemologist and eventual vice president for Tiffany and Company, he was already working in California with the tourmalines and the morganites and gemstones from Southern California, from the pegmatites, and he heard about this Californite gem, as he called it, and he promoted it as American gemstone. It's really interesting that Kuhns had this wonderful idea about made in America, well over 100 years ago, where he and Tiffany went out and they looked for stones that were mined in the United States. And he promoted them very heavily. In fact, they even came up with an alternative to the sort of standard birthstone list that was promoted by the American Jewelers Associations. Anyway, so this became the March birthstone on the Tiffany birthstone calendar, so to speak. And it was quite a neat gem. It actually makes beautiful cabochons. It's rarely faceted, but it does make good cabochons. And it's interesting, this property that this Dr. Hiwei had was purchased by James Craft in the 1930s during the Depression. And he lived up there and he mined Vesuvianite from his claims. James Craft was I guess the owner to Kraft Foods. So he had quite a bit of money and he liked his hunting and recreation, and he was a rock hound. So he had bought this property as his escape and, mined Vesuvianite on and off for probably about 20 years. Okay. Now, there's other locales where it's been found. One of them is called Pulga in Butte County, Selma, Tulare County. There's a place in Fresno County as well. In all, there's probably about 14 different little mines and prospects in Northern California, with the biggest one located in Happy Camp. The Pulga deposit, which they call Pulga Jade, has a really, really exceptional color, and I'm going to show you pictures of it. It's remarkable. It has a little bit of chromium in it, which gives it the beautiful green color, and that becomes very important when you see what this stuff looks like. Okay, here's a typical piece of the quote Pulga Jade, which is the Vesuvianite from this very well-known deposit. You see it's very light. It's more or less almost colorless, with impurities caused by chromium within the masses of the crystals here. And there's a lot of chromium, a lot of chromite, mineral chromite in Northern California. And so this is just enough in it to give this beautiful color. And chromium is the thing that gives jade, especially the jadeite, its beautiful green color. So chromium colors a lot of things, emeralds, in particular, chrome diopside, say the chromium in jade, and even things like alexandrite. Okay, again, this is a metamorphic mineral. This is caused where limestones come in contact with serpentine this is stuff, again, that's been subducted. It's been dragged down, dozens of miles below the surface of the earth as these two continents or the two plates are colliding together. And so this material is dragged down, it's heated, it's chemically changed. In this case, the Vesuvianite forms at the contact zone between the limestones and the serpentinized rocks, which were originally basalts. And it can be found with other minerals. Grossular garnet is very common with it. There's some mica. And interesting enough, some of the cabochons that have been cut or slabbed, or things that have been slabbed from the Happy Camp jade, actually have flecks or inclusions of gold in them. And those are pretty cool and very rare. But you can, on occasion, find gold in the Happy Camp Vesuvianite, which would make quite a prize for a cabochon. Now, here are some of the Vesuvianite. This is some of the Pulga jade here. You can see it's a beautiful color. It's a really nice material, and it takes a pretty good polish. It has a hardness, again, about 6 to 6.5. It's very similar to, say, the moonstone, labradorite, benitoite, the feldspars in general. So it'll take a pretty decent polish, but it's quite a nice and fairly unique California gem material. Okay, anyone have any questions about the Vesuvianite? Say, not, we can move. Question?
Yeah. Yes, I just wonder. I have a specimen of Vesuvianite, and it's more. I think it came from Canada, and it actually has crystals.
Yes.
It has both the greenish and purple color.
Yes. Yeah, that's from Quebec, Canada.
And is that fastable or is that not fastable?
Actually, on rare occasions, that's the material you're most likely to see faceted, yes. Usually they're very small stones, but I have seen the Canadian material faceted on rare occasions. But this material is more massive. So, it's just the chunks of material that are intermixed with the other rocks. So you generally don't have as clean a material. A lot of this stuff is very fractured because it's intense pressure. And so in this case, because this is at the edge of two continents, they're pushing into each other. And so that caused a lot of stress on the rocks. So if you look at these pictures, if you can see, it's pretty fractured, a lot of it. In fact, yeah, I think, but I'd say rare occasions, yes, there is some nice facet Vesuvianite. Elaine, did you have a question? Okay. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I'll let Marjorie.
Melinda, do you have a question?
Is it still mined today?
I think so. I think you can, as far as I know, it's private property, but I still see material occasionally on the market. More likely you're to see it if you go to a show or maybe a rock swap or trade. Occasionally you'll find it in old collections because it's been around for well over 100 years, the lapidary material. So you will find some nice stuff.
And what kind of prices does it go for?
Well, I mean,
grade?
It depends if they know what they have. I've seen it sold as real jade, which just sells for much more than it should. But, I bet, a nice slab at a show, you'll probably find in the $5 to $20 range. And you should get some nice cabochons out of it.
Okay, thank you.
But the cut stones can be worth quite a bit, especially if it has a nice color and a really high luster.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little softer, so you have to know, what the best polishing agents are. Yeah, Elaine, do you have a question? Go ahead. Marjorie, could you turn on Elaine? Oh.
Just a quick question. Is Idocrase ever like transparent and sort of a yellowy green?
It can be, yes. Yeah, in fact, I've even seen some material that's almost on the brown side, and that
Yeah.
would have a lot of iron in it, which would be the impurity in that case.
Which make it dirty brown.
Yeah,
Okay,
because
thank you.
there's some material that comes out of Mexico. We get these kind of squarish Idocrase crystals that are kind of an orangey brown, and those have, I would say, probably no chromium and a lot of iron in it, which gives it that color.
That color.
In this
Okay.
case, in the case of the California material, there's very little iron and enough chromium to give it the
Make it more
color.
green. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Walt.
Hmm.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it ever confused with chrysoprase?
You know, it could possibly be. It's a lot softer for one thing, and the
Okay.
color tends to be more of a yellowish than bluish.
Right.
You know, most of chrysoprase is going to be side of a bluish green, where this
Right.
tends to be more of a yellowish green, like, you know, grass color. You know, maybe consider it more like you'd see for peridot or something like that.
Right. Chrysoprase is a little more minty.
Yeah, but I'm going to go back a few pictures. Now, let's see. I'll go back. Let me see if I can find it. Oh yeah, yeah. I guess, you know, if you look at this picture I showed earlier, you know, if you get the really big concentrations of chromium in it, you know, it can be fairly dark. Maybe it can approach an emerald green,
Mhm.
but that'd be pretty rare. You generally don't see any bluish color in it though. So yeah,
Right.
and if you did a hardness test, you'd know right away
Right.
that
Okay.
this is a lot softer. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, you bet. Okay, any last questions? All right, so we're going to move on to another metamorphic rock, which is kind of a fun one, and that's Lapis Lazuli, and that's just found in our neighborhood down here in Southern California, the area known as Cascade Canyon, primarily, which is right up behind the little town of Upland. So this is a neat material. There are several other places where it's found, but this is the most well-known in California. Lapis is found in a few places in the U.S. There's a little bit that's found in Colorado, and but this is most notable. It was discovered in the talus or float coming off the side of the mountain. It's actually found in off of Stoddard Peak in San Bernardino County. It was discovered by a mineral dealer. His name was Mr. Wilkie. He was from Palo Alto in about 1910, and he recognizes lapis. The local miners had seen it earlier, but they thought it was a silver mineral, and it caused them to look in the area for silver, which they didn't find because you don't find silver in that environment. So they kind of moved on and thought it was either a mineral they couldn't extract the silver from, but they just had it all wrong. So anyway, it's possible that somebody may have recognized it as lapis, but from everything I could tell, Mr. Wilkie was the first one to really recognize it and then advertise it as lapis. So he kind of gets credit for it. And to this day, you can still go up to this area and find it. Okay, one thing I should mention about lapis or lapis lazuli, it is a rock. It's not technically a mineral. Okay, it's a combination of things, just like a granite, you know, has different things. Well, lapis lazuli is a rock, and it's composed of 3 different minerals, which can give it the blue color. It may have all 3 in the rock. It may only have 1, depending on the locality. There's the mineral lazulite, the mineral sodalite, and the mineral hauene, which looks like Hayun. That's a German name. But all those 3 minerals are all related, and they're bright, bright blue. So a lot of the material is primarily sodalite. That's the most common. The Afghani material has a lot more lazulite in it, but you generally see some of all 3. Other minerals that are found in this rock include diopside, pyrite, calcite, quartz, and sometimes graphite, which is a, you know, very almost silvery gray to black color and very let's say very slick. Anyway, lapis is created from igneous rocks like limestones that come in contact with igneous rocks. In this case, in the San Bernardino Mountains, it's granites. So we have the granite, comes up molten into limestone, it literally cooks the limestone. It melts it, dissolves it, and the granitic minerals and the minerals that are in the limestone in this case will mix together and form new minerals. That's what they call contact metamorphism. So it creates all new crystals. And so you'll find areas, if you want to prospect for stuff like this, a lot of other minerals, you'll look where the granites and the limestones come together. And along that rim, sometimes it's a couple feet, sometimes it could be a mile across where you get this alteration zone. So it depends on the size of the granites that were intruded into the limestones. Okay, so in the early 1910s, the material was mined with some limited success. Again, at that time, there wasn't a huge market for it. LA County wasn't very populous at that time, not a big demand. So I think it was more of a mineral oddity, probably since the guy who found it was a mineral dealer. It was probably sold more for mineral specimens. And I would assume if you see some old California mineral collections, you'd probably find a piece of lapis in them from Cascade Canyon. It was mined in the 1930s, and you'll find there's a lot of minerals that in these little gem deposits, gold deposits, whatever, were mined in the 1930s. And that's just because of the Depression. People were out of work and they needed money and they needed to do something. So a lot of people tried their luck at mining. So that's why you see so many different gem deposits were active in the 30s. This little aside there. After World War II, there was a new prosperity and people were doing all kinds of things. So this area was mined again, and a company was formed when they found a large lapis vein pretty far up the hill. It's a real rugged trek to this area. There's a lot of this, what they call scree or talus. There's this loose rock that's sliding off the side of a very steep mountain. There's a lot of manzanita. It's really rough terrain. So it's not easy to get up to this area. And it's a little bit on the dangerous side. It's one of these, you one step up and then 2 steps down, or maybe 3. Anyway, it's found in the National Forest, and it was mined in the 40s. And then as a lot of these gem deposits go, there was a number of years where there was no activity. And in 1979, the area was claimed and worked for lapis. And this becomes a very interesting side story. But they had what's called the Bighorn mine, which one? And here's some specimens from it. It's actually nice material. It's fairly distinctive. It's not quite as, overall as vivid color as you see from the Afghani material. If you saw them side by side, there are some differences, although some of the best material from Cascade Canyon could probably be passed off as Afghani, because it does have some pyrite. It's got the quartz and calcite. But again, it's not overall as high quality, and there's not near as much as you find in Afghanistan. But it's still enough where tons of material were produced from this mine over the years. Okay, so as far as history goes, that in 1979, this a gentleman named Sam Bostra started mining. And he was mining on a daily basis. He was finding about 50 to 150 pounds of material that he was trekking off the hill. This was good, fairly good quality stuff. Problem he ran into was that he claimed it in 1979 as a mining claim, but it turned out in 1964, Congress had designated this part of a wilderness area, the Cucamonga Wilderness, and it was withdrawn from mineral entry, which means you cannot file a mining claim on an area that's in a wilderness and withdrawn. So he was taken to court. He was hit with a cease and desist order. And in 1984, in a court decision, it was determined that the claim was null and void, and he had to vacate it. Basically, it kicked him off the hill. So that's the last time it was mined. It's illegal to file a claim on it, although people can to this day go up and go up the hillsides and find material that's fallen down farther down the hill. It's interesting because Cascade Canyon is also known for the corundum or ruby location, which is on the same hill. And the ruby is a little bit lower and the lapis is higher up the hill. So it's easier to find the rubies than it is the lapis. But there are people that I know that do go up there on occasion. They'll hike. It's quite a hike. but they can still find good material. And it's pretty neat. I've got a few pieces in my collection, and it's probably something, if you've got a California gem collection, it's something you should have. But I've seen some really neat stuff come out of there. Now, just to give you a quick idea of the geology, this is the geology of this area. And these, again, are primarily older metamorphic rocks. You've got gneisses, which are kind of layered metamorphic rocks. You've got granites. You have quartzites and marbles and all kinds of stuff. Some quartz diorites and monzonites, which are igneous rock. So this is an area that's been uplifted. Granites have pushed the original rock up and formed these mountains. And you've got all kinds of things intermixed. You've got different, materials have been shot in at different times into the metamorphic rocks. And you find that, let's see, here it is. This area right here, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, where the star is on the sort of central right portion of the screen, that is the location of it. And it occurs, and again, you're looking at this just as the surface. It's the surface geology. You don't see what's underneath it. But this is in an area that's primarily in some, gneisses and schists, and it's adjacent to this dark blue is the marbles and limestones, and you've got a bunch of granites and things. These pinkish rocks are the granites. And this is the material that's kind of come in and cooked these rocks and formed these deposits. So, and then these yellow areas are landslide deposits. So you can see these are pretty long, because that is about, this one here is, well, let's see, you've got 1, 2, 3. This landslide deposit right here is about a half a mile long. So it's pretty good size. So it's a very steep hill. So when that stuff comes down, it comes down in, large volumes. So you do have to be careful going up in that area. Now, there are places besides Cascade Canyon where this material has been reported. And there's an old U.S. Geological Survey report that said there was some lapis found in Brayfogle Canyon on the east side of Death Valley. It's actually mentioned in this old report, and they said that a Lapis Lazuli mining company was created. And this was before the material at Cascade Canyon was found. In the early 1900s, Death Valley had a lot of prospecting for gold, for copper, for other things. So it wouldn't be so surprising that it was found there. There's another locale. It's called the San Carlos Mine in Inyo County. I have not seen anything from this mine. It's kind of speculation, and we're not even sure that, we know where the San Carlos is, but that's in Inyo County. And I believe that's one up near Telescope Peak. And so anyway, there are some other areas. Again, that whole area around Death Valley, from about Baker into Death Valley and into Nevada, you've got all these old Paleozoic limestones where you have all these granitic rocks that have come up that are related to the Sierra Nevadas. And so those are the rocks that have cooked the limestones and create the environment where you can possibly find the lapis lazuli. I'm going to check something here. Okay. Now, one thing, I'll just give a little interesting story. I worked as a geologist in Death Valley for a mining company that was mining borate minerals underground in the early 80s. And my boss lived in Tecopa Hot Springs. I don't know if you've ever been out there past Baker, going up north. Anyway, he wanted me to meet a guy who lived out in Tecopa. And he said, I really need to meet this guy, because he knew I was into gems and minerals and things like that. So we went out to meet him. This had been about 1984, 1985, I think. And I met this guy. His name was Paul. And he went out to his little ranch, and he had been mining lapis from a location within Death Valley. And they had expanded the national park and then incorporated his mining claim, and they basically kicked him out of it. But he had some really nice lapis. In fact, I don't have a piece. I wish I did, because I'd love to see it. But I think that might be what they're calling the San Carlos mine in Inyo County. But it was pretty neat. It was nice stuff. Interesting thing about this guy named Paul, his nickname was Little Paul. And he was one of Charles Manson's associates before Manson went on his crazy killing spree. And he had left the group. And actually, he was a guy who testified against Manson in the big trial. In fact, he's mentioned in the book Helter Skelter, if you've ever seen that. So it's kind of interesting. I got to meet some kind of a semi-notorious guy. And just as another aside, when I met him, he had just come back from Hawaii. And he offered my boss and I a cigar, which was basically the largest marijuana cigarette I'd ever seen. These things were massive. He just brought it back from Hawaii. So he was quite the character. Didn't partake, but I wish I would have taken one of the Lapis instead. So anyway, so there's potential out there in Southern California. I would think that there's areas around Victorville, out towards Bakersfield, obviously Inyo County. A lot of these areas, theoretically, you might find lapis lazuli in some of these environments. If you go out towards, say, the backside of Big Bear, towards Lucerne Valley, you see there's all the old marble quarries. If you've ever driven down in Apple Valley from Big Bear, if you go down the hill, there's a big limestone mine there. It's actually a marble that they're mining, where the granites from the mountains there at Big Bear come in contact with those limestones. Theoretically, it might be possible to find some lapis in that area. So, if you guys ever go up in some of these areas, keep your eye out for things like that, because it is possible that there are other areas that haven't been discovered yet. So again, I'll take some questions now. Marjorie, if we have any questions for this or any of the other things I talked about tonight.
There's nothing in chat right now, but you can unmute yourself. I think, Collie, you've unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Walt, could you do you have an explanation of why pyrite seems to be always associated with lapis?
Yes, it's because these rocks were initially limestones that have been cooked by the granites. Limestone can have a lot of organic material in it. Okay, basically, if you've seen a lot of limestones, they're kind of black, and if you break them, they have a smell to them, because that's from the decomposition of the organic materials, the corals and the brachiopods and all the ocean animals, in the algae and all that stuff in the muds. The iron might come from the granites, because a lot of times you'll see granites have pyrite in them. But anyway, so when you have organic material, besides the carbon, you have sulfur. So if you take the sulfur from the limestones and the iron from the granite, mix them together, you get pyrite. And that's pretty much why you get it. So
back on the Benitoite, have you ever been to the fee dig there at all?
I have not. No, I've not. I know people have gone. Like I said, one of my customers found a beautiful piece there. It's not easy to find a good specimen, but it's certainly possible. Most people will find small crystals, portions of crystals. A lot of them are heavily included, but there are some just beautiful little, even included crystals are pretty cool. You get these nice little triangular crystals. So it's probably worth doing at least once to say you've been up there. So
yes, we went and had a great time. They had a tent. It was in the day. They had a tent set up where you could go and take your the rocks that you got from the wash and look for the ones that would show up in the black light. They had some crystals there that nice crystals of the form that Benitoite has, but they were kind of brownish, and
yes.
They called them something. I can't remember what.
Yeah, there's a couple. I'm going to go back. Let's go back. I can show you. There's a couple. There's Fresnoite, and let's see here. Here's a couple. Well, let's see. Like here, you've got in this picture on the left, there's Joaquinite and Fresnoite, which are kind of yellow to orangey, almost a honey brown or honey orange colored crystals. And those are a couple of the rare ones. Here's one, Joaquinite, which are nice little glassy, almost not quite cubic crystals. So they are commonly found there. They're very small. They're maybe a millimeter or two. They're not very big, but it's a very rare mineral. And so if you're a mineral collector, it's a pretty desirable thing to have. So like I say, there's about 5 or 6 different minerals that are found at this location. You know, neptunite, dazurolite, fresnoite, joaquinite, and you know, the natrolite being the primary ones.
Yes, these actually had the crystal structure of the benitoites.
Oh, okay.
So, but for some reason they didn't complete the crystallization to become the benitoites, and I can't recall what they called them. They had a funny name for them.
Okay, they're probably then included crystals. There's several minerals that form inside these, or actually they form first and the benitoite grows around them. The most common mineral that's found is crossite, which is a very sort of, it can be a gray to brown to greenish fibrous mineral. It's related to basically it's an asbestos mineral. And they can, I mean, almost saturate the benitoite. So you really can't see the blue anymore. It can be gray or greenish or bluish gray, something like that.
Yeah.
And there could be other things too. There could be some other minerals that are incorporated to that, which would give it that color. You know, there's a place, I think it's in Japan, where they actually have pink benitoite, which is really unusual.
Thank you.
Oh, you bet. Any other questions about anything?
We have a question.
Did you ever have the opportunity for find Lapis Lazuli in Mont Bailey?
No, I've not. Actually, that would be a lot of fun to do, though.
Okay.
No, I've got, you know, I talked to a gentleman yesterday who said he's got a friend who still goes up, you know, to the mines, you know, here up above Upland, and does find stuff. I mean, a lot of people can go up there. You have to buy a parking pass for the day for your car. You can park along the road and go up into Cascade Canyon. But yeah, there's a lot of places that have also produced it. I mean, Chile has produced some very interesting lapis. Of course, Afghanistan is the best of any of them, but we're pretty fortunate. We have a lot of neat stuff here in California. I mean, you know, way better live here than Iowa for mineral gem collecting, I guess. So.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Oh, one more question.
Yeah, sure.
So do you think that where are copper areas we can find Lapis Lazuli? Like Chile, that is a copper producer?
In where, what location?
In areas where you find copper, would you find lapis?
Generally not. The copper's not the function. It's the function of having the limestones and the granites next to each other. Now, I mean, you do find that in places like Chile and Peru, where you've got those granites that form the Andes, but you'd have to have the right chemistry in the granite and in the limestones to produce the lapis. So you have to make minerals like, you know, sodalite, and, you know, haween and lazulite. And for some reason, those minerals are pretty rare in this environment. So that's why there's only a few places in the world where you find it like that. Chemistry has to be just right to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
You bet. Any other questions?
Walt, this is
Yes, sir.
Richard Burt. When you were out in Death Valley, did you go out to the Copper Springs opal mines?
I did once. I actually found a couple little pieces of beautiful pinfire opal. They're tiny though. I mean, we're talking millimeters across. I've seen a few pieces that were bigger. That's an interesting one. That is in a volcanic ash bed. You know, if you go in the flat areas near where the old rivers have cut little channels through the sort of the flatlands there, you can occasionally find, it's kind of a grayish altered volcanic ash, and there'll be these little, you know, you'll find these little tiny pinpricks of precious opal. The matrix is pretty soft. The opal's generally small, but it's a beautiful fire opal. If you get a big enough piece, I mean, it'd be pretty beautiful.
A second question for you is that with Californite, is it closely related to serpentinite, which you see a lot of in Jade Cove in Central California?
Well, it is related to from the fact that these are derived from basalts. Okay, this material started as basalts. I don't know if you've ever seen the, like the National Geographic and programs like that, where you see these pillow lavas that are coming up from under the floor of the ocean. There's, you know, ruptures in the ocean floor where this magma is coming up from the mantle, and you get these blobs, these pillow-like blobs those they're called pillow lavas. That is the kind of material that then is pushed against the continent and subducted. It drags part of the continental material with it. So what you'd have to have is the chemistry, again, just right, you know, to produce some of these things, where the serpentinites, you know, serpentine's pretty widespread, but there's different alterations of the serpentine depending on the chemistry of the things it's mixed with, depends on the temperature, how deep it went below the surface. I mean, some of the serpentines may be formed 10 to 20 miles below the surface. There's some people think some of these could be more than 100, maybe 120 miles below the surface. Some of the stuff can get pushed way, way down. So the variabilities in the serpentines or serpentinites would depend on how deep it was buried, how much pressure and temperature was subjected to, and what it was mixed with. And that's why you see the variability in the types of minerals that are found in some of these areas. Yeah, some of these serpentines have chromite in them, a lot of chromite, massive chromite mines, occasionally with things like the some of the chromium-rich garnets like uvarovite and even occasionally demantoid. In other areas, you'll find, you know, when they mix with some things, you'll get a whole different host of things, like in this case, the benitoites. But generally, the benitoite is a secondary mineral that the benitoite formed, for example, after the rocks were altered. So it came much later. And so they occur in areas where they've been fractured and there's open spaces, and these hot fluids come in and deposit the minerals at a later date. So in some cases, it's formed at the time of the contact, like things like the Vesuvianites and the Lapis. In other cases, in the benitoite, it formed later. So that's another factor. They don't always form at the same time. So. All right, any other questions? I would say, you know, there's quite a bit of things out there. There's lots of minerals out there, and I'm sure a lot of stuff that hasn't been discovered. You know, people are finding new stuff pretty much every year. You'll see new things that come out. Some of the new pegmatites that are found, new gemstone deposits. So the nice thing about being a rock hound, if you like to get out, you know, as long as you have an open mind, there's all kinds of cool things you can find in this state, in Arizona, Nevada, wherever. So I always encourage people, you know, you might be looking for one thing, but keep your eyes open for all the other possibilities, because sometimes some of the best discoveries of different minerals and gems have been things that people weren't expecting. And I think that was the case with the benitoite. It's certainly with the case like Montana sapphire, silver in the Comstock lode. People were looking for something else and came across something that was way more valuable than what they originally started looking for. So I guess at that, I'll say I'm pretty much done, unless anyone's got any last questions. And thank you very much for listening to me tonight.
Great job, Walter.
Oh,
Thank you so much. So interesting.
So, well, I appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you.
And, you know, if you have any questions, if you just want to email me, my email is minbooks, MINBOOKS, @AOL.com. If you have any questions, or if you're in Orange, you're more than welcome to stop by and talk to me. I'm pretty open. I will, you know, identify a weird mineral or rock that you have. I get people coming all the time looking for things they think are meteorites or other things. I'm always happy to look. And, you know, I'll just a very interesting story, if you have another minute. I had a young man come in last week. He was looking for a birthday gift for his girlfriend. She liked opals, so he found something for him. He said he was going to bring her back. And plus he had some other weird rocks he wanted to show me. He came in yesterday with his girlfriend, and he had this little bag of rocks, and there was a bunch of little desert roses and a piece of chromite. And then he had these weird little sort of slightly bluish, greasy looking rocks. And I asked him where he got these, and said he was with his parents on a road trip to Texas. They were in Central Texas, and they had a flat tire or something happened to their car, and they were parked along the interstate for a couple hours. And so while they were waiting for a tow truck to come, that he was out just picking up rocks, and he said he found these cool rocks. They were all over the place. Well, I brought him in to me. He's had them for over 10 years. The crystals he brought in were topaz, right off Interstate Highway. And now there is topaz in Central Texas, but this could be a brand new locale for topaz in Texas. And I can just imagine there's little cavities, that are probably of smoky quartz and feldspars and topaz just laying maybe 100 yards off an interstate. So you never know what you're going to find. And ironically, he's going back there to visit some relatives next month. So he's going to try to talk to his parents and see if they have any idea where he was. So that would be really cool to see a new topaz locality found just because someone had a flat tire or something like that. So anyway, well, again, thank you very much for your attention. I appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it.
Okay, Walter, thank you very much. I'm sure all our viewers enjoyed this presentation tonight. And we're all looking forward to get out and eventually start hunting rocks again.
Absolutely. Well, it's easy to social distance out in the boonies, so hopefully we can do that.
Yeah, rocks don't require masks, so you're pretty safe there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, everybody want to give Walt a good hand?
Oh, nice.
I have one more question, Walt.
Sure.
The Cascade Canyon, is that the place that's out by Mount Baldy?
Yes, yeah. It's actually Stoddard Peak. It's the Forest Service. You have to get a parking day pass. I think it costs $5. You just have to contact the ranger station. I think you can do it online, but you do need a parking pass to park there, or they will ticket you and maybe tow you away. And after a day of hiking in the boonies up there, you don't want to have to come back and find your cars. Yeah, but I think it's just like the $5 parking pass is all you need.
Very cool. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
That was so good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah, super
appreciate it.
interesting. Yeah.
Well, thanks for being my guinea pigs. This is my first Zoom talk, so.
Thank you,
Did
Walter.
great. Did great.
Okay, you guys have a great night. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Great job.
Good night. Thanks. Bye.